While we're waiting a few minutes for our last few people to come in, I'll share something with you. Let's see. So here is my experience with the Auburn Dog. This was 2 years ago. My family and I went to Washington, D.C., and this is right out in front of the Capitol building where you go in. And when we got there, there were 2 huge policemen or guards with very large guns and dressed all in black and with bulletproof vests. And one of them had a handle on this dog. And they were very scary looking. You know, they were tough. They were there to do their job and make sure everything was going okay. And I went up to him and I said, "Is that an Auburn Dog?" And he completely melted and started smiling. He wanted to talk to me. And I said, "Oh, you know, I'm from Auburn. We love the Auburn Dogs." And he was like, oh, he was so proud that not only he had an Auburn Dog, but that we had recognized that this might be an Auburn Dog. And so that's my daughter and my son. And it was just a really neat experience to be somewhere like that and to come across something that had a connection to home. So let me see what. I think everyone's here. No one's waiting, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kim Walker, and I am the director of the Women's Philanthropy Board, which is an educational outreach program housed in the Auburn University College of Human Sciences. Women's Philanthropy Board, or WPB as we call it, is the flagship division of the Carey Center for the Advancement of Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies, which is an academic center within the College of Human Sciences. We also have programs you may have heard of for youth, like Camp I Care, or some community programs that we have, like the Nonprofit Affiliate Program. This is our 7th virtual program since we have all been home under this quarantine, and we're thrilled for all of you to be with us today. We have several great programs that we have coming up. We'll tell you about the one that's later this week at the end of this session. WPB is a membership organization. All of our educational program, our mentoring initiatives, and our philanthropic impact is made possible by about 200 individual donors and 25 in corporate and business partners. So if you're interested in learning more about becoming a part of the WPB membership, I would love to talk to you about that. You can email me at kimwalker@auburn.edu. For our session today, we're going to let Mrs. Pamela Haney talk about the program. And then towards the end, she will open it up for questions. Some of you submitted some questions when you RSVP'd, and I've sent those to her, but we can go over those. And if you have any questions during the session, if you want to put those into the chat feature, you can either bring them up to her or I can read them for you later on. So I'd love to introduce Pamela Haney, who is the Canine Performance Sciences Research and Development Manager. And I'm sure she'll tell us more about what exactly that means. So thank you again for being with us today. Thank you, Pamela, for joining us and leading this session, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna turn my volume up just so hopefully I'm not blaring on your end, but I figure it's better for you to adjust it than not be able to hear me. So again, I'm Pam Haney. I am, like she said, I manage the research and development for Canine Performance Sciences. I'm going to share my screen, and I hope that there are no glitches and all the videos play. I tried to put a lot of visual aid in here for everybody just so that it is easier to see and follow along. There's not very many of us, so if you have a question throughout, please just consider this more of a discussion and understanding versus, me just presenting all this information to you. So if you have a question, please just speak up and stop in between. I do have the questions that were asked about COVID-19, and I will get to that. So if you want to ask that question, please wait till we get to that information. So let's get started. Our mission at Canine Performance Sciences is to innovate canine detection technology. And we do that by exploring basic and applied research. Oh, she muted me. Well, you can read it. It's okay. So I want to take you on a little bit of a journey to understanding where you find this dog, and then really help you to understand some of the research and development that we do here in the program. And then hopefully it'll all paint this really nice picture for you at the end. So where do I find a top quality dog? The answer is simple. The Auburn Dog is one of a kind. It's unique. You cannot find it anywhere else. It is absolutely true to Auburn, and I feel a great representation of all of the values that are in the creed and how everyone just works together to get the job done. And this dog is absolutely friendly, welcomes everyone into the Auburn family, you name it. It's the Auburn Dog. So we're gonna start with where they come from. We're gonna take a little journey down pregnancy lane. So all of our dogs receive top quality care. After they're bred, at 30 days post-breeding, they'll have an ultrasound. You can see that she's pregnant. At that point, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly how many are in there, especially this was a very large litter, so you know that there's more than one because you can see multiple sites at one time. They don't mind laying in this little taco here. It's quite comfortable. You can see she's so now we do puppy radiographs right about 10 days before they're going to whelp. And you can see that she had 10 puppies. These puppies, 2 of them were born naturally and the other 8 came out via C-section. So this was the team that helped deliver these puppies. That one was itty bitty. It was so sweet. Fell right asleep in his hand. You may not realize it, but puppies don't open their eyes until they're about 10 days or 14 days old. So early on, they can't hear or see. So everything to survive is dependent on olfaction. They have to find mom by smelling her and getting to her in the box. Newborn pictures are quite fun. They're just like little babies. You can position them where you want them and they'll just stay there. It's quite fun. So let's talk about the Auburn Dog. And when we say phenotype, we just mean the physical characteristics of that dog. So what we're aiming for is a dog to breed a dog that is absolutely capable of doing a vapor wake repertoire. So this dog has to be absolutely independent, can air scent, and isn't dependent on locating targets on objects. This dog is very, very motivated to work. It is not distracted by the environment, not distracted by people. If you were to bounce tennis balls around it, it wouldn't matter because this dog knows I don't get my reward until I do my job. We also need a dog that really is more motivated to search than have social interaction. Now, that's where it gets a little tricky because we need the dog to have really good handler engagement. So the dog has to want to work with the handler. The dog has to want to be around individuals, but we don't want a dog that just wants to be pet all the time. So when they're little, we actually go through a period of time where the only time they get pet is when they have their reward and they're doing their job, so that they learn this game is really fun, and every time I play it, I get this toy and I get loved on by my handler, and it helps build a lot of that handler engagement. A lot of it comes naturally though. We have genetics play a very large role in creating that handler engagement, and the dogs generally in this program have no problem wanting to interact and please the handler and work for that reward. Now, this dog also has to be environmentally sound, meaning it has to be able to go out into many large areas with multi-directional traffic, lots of vehicles, lots of clutter, and not be afraid. One of the biggest reasons that a dog that is otherwise capable to do vapor wake repertoire would not succeed is for a behavioral issue, meaning that there's some environmental issue. Maybe we actually had a dog afraid of toilets. It wasn't afraid of anything else, just toilets. It didn't make any sense. Every time it went into a bathroom to search, it'd see a toilet and was like, I'm out. Like, I don't want to be in here. And it really made it difficult with that dog to overcome that. And it's sometimes the most odd thing, but they have to be absolutely environmental sound. But we found that breeding, early development, and really their first year of life raising and everything that we work with them really enhances that outcome and produces the most sound dog. One of the other big things that we have to really look at and understand is arousal. And this is one of the topics that we're really focused on now because there's this optimal level of arousal. I'm sure that some of you have this dog that is over the top and never calms down, never relaxes, is always excited, always stressed, just high end dog. And then some of you have this dog that doesn't want to get off the couch. What we need is this dog that is absolutely in the middle of this. So that dog at the low end is really going to lack motivation to work. The dog at the high end is going to be so excited that it can't even focus on the task at hand. So we say that we're breeding this unicorn dog that has absolutely the best of both worlds, that is independent but yet manageable, yet engaged, and can focus that energy, and that is a big key. Just real quickly, our breeding program here at Auburn, we go through 6 phases. The first one is obviously selecting the most high quality dogs to be bred. We go through pregnancy and whelping. You saw a good part of that phase. The next one is in the nursery here, and that occurs from birth to 7 weeks of age. And there's a lot of early development stimulation that goes on in that phase that we've found has been extremely helpful for getting the puppies ready to move on into the main kennel when they get older. They're handled, they're put on different materials, they're allowed to explore with their litter mates. They also get individualized training time, because a lot of times when you're with your buddy, you're not quite as scared. But if you're out by yourself, it's a little bit different picture. And we really want these dogs to be absolutely independent and be able to do it on their own. And it starts when they're below 7 weeks of age. From 7 weeks to 6 months, we just take and build upon what they've learned in the nursery and take it out into the real world. Now, we still don't go full real world until the puppies are right about 16 weeks of age, after they've had all of their vaccinations. Up until 16 weeks, we limit where we go just to make sure that the puppies aren't exposed to anything that could get them sick, basically. From 6 to 10 months, the dogs go into prisons in Florida and Georgia, and there they work with the inmates. They live with them 24/7. They learn how to live in this tight enclosed space. They learn how to wait in line, which is very, very critical. The inmates actually house train them because they don't want them to go inside the prison, and they're allowed to take them out several times a day. So that's extremely helpful. And then the last phase from really 10 to 12 months occurs back here at Auburn, where they get foundational vapor wake training. They're put on odors, and then they're sold to agencies. Let's talk a little bit about understanding detection. What is the science of detection? So when we ask this dog to do a task, we, as the people, have to understand the chemistry, the physics, physiology of this target. We need to understand how it moves, where it really, how best it is absorbed, how it's functioned, how the micro and macro environments around the target function. If the heat seems to make it a little easier to find, if the cold makes it easier to find. We have to understand the dog's capabilities. If we don't understand what they're capable of, then we don't know the best situation to put them in. We have to understand the handler's capabilities, because a lot of times the weakest link in all of this is the handler, it's not the dog. The dog will do everything you ask it to do, but it's a matter of being able to communicate all of those materials from handler to dog, handler to supervisor. And all of this together allows us to optimize detection. So let's talk a little bit about dog capabilities. So the dog is amazing when you talk about its olfactory receptors. It has 300 million receptors in its nose. We, the best people, probably have about 4 million. So we are way, way below sensory capabilities. The dog has 2 bilateral chambers. So each nostril basically functions independently of the other one. They have a scent bank in their olfactory receptor in their brain. And so they get smarter with every single target. And having those 300 million sensory receptors, the dog is able to smell in parts per trillion. So when you think about parts per trillion, that's really, really a hard number to fathom, but I love putting it in this analogy just because it's something tangible. Everybody knows what Jordan-Hare Stadium looks like. There are 144 million blades of grass in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And if you extrapolate that to a trillion, it takes 7,000 Jordan-Hare stadiums to get to a trillion blades of grass. So if you contaminate 1 blade of grass in all of those stadiums, the dog can find that 1 blade of grass. And that's as best we can know. It could be greater, but man-made capability to test that doesn't go that low. So right now, we know that it's parts per trillion, but it could be even better. So let me show you a little bit about this bilateral vapor sensing. It's actually really, really cool. So everybody sees the little slit in the dog's nose. Everybody's seen their dog nose where it comes out and then it has that little slit in the side. So the coolest thing about it is when the dog sucks in air, it comes in the front, and then when it exhales, it pushes it out the side of its nose. And then if it breathes in real quick again, it can resample new air plus the air that it just sampled. And it can sample about 6 breaths per second and really, really fast if it's smelling really fast. And so the dog continually gets a new bout of air, but keeps the old bout of air. And then this olfactory recess that you see on the right that's yellow, all of that information gets stored in that olfactory recess. And a little bit of air gets left over. So the dog is able to process very quickly where the odor is coming from. And given that both sides of its nose operate independently, it can know, is it on my left? Is it on my right? It's so cool to watch when they actually get an odor, and I'm going to show you some videos of that. But the fact that they can smell that fast and always get fresh air is really cool, because they're always able to really locate the target and where it's coming from. And how do we know of this? So we absolutely function on a multidisciplinary scientific approach. We know that we are dependent on everyone across campus. We work with multiple agencies. We work with many individuals to make all this happen. We are absolutely collaborative in everything that we do, pretty much. And it's wonderful because everybody can work together. These are some of the, because it's always fun to show this slide, I think, and the next one. These are some of the big wigs that have come to visit the program this year and those engaged with CPS. So we're truly on the cutting edge of national security and working to keep everyone safe. And everybody comes and visits. It's quite neat. When we talk about projects this year, we have a lot of stuff going on with the FBI and then some other groups, Johns Hopkins and Homeland Security, some really cool stuff that's going to advance canine detection. We're also doing some genetic research with Hudson Alpha Institute and the Broad Institute. So let's talk about vapor wake for a second, just so that we've understood that this dog has this bilateral vapor sensing. When we talk about what is vapor wake, so this video right here is an image of an individual walking, creating a human aerodynamic wake. So while we all sit here, your heat is rising. So heat rises and your body has many, many odors on it. Whatever you washed in today, whatever you had for lunch, could even be what you were around yesterday, if you're in the same shirt, if you have whatever deodorant you're on, if you have a medical condition, all of that's putting off odor. And while we sit here, it's rising above us. But when we walk, it creates this aerodynamic wake that really creates brightly ribbon colors for the dog. It makes it so simple for the dog to trail, which is why vapor wake is so great, because it's a non-intrusive search and the dog can follow these brightly colored ribbons, which obviously that's a computer animation. It doesn't really look like that, but to the dog, it's that simple. It can smell parts per trillion, and then you're leaving this trail behind you where you go, which is why it makes it next to impossible to hide and get away. So when we talk about locating, a suicide bomber, we truly believe that at the Boston bombing, had there been a vapor wake dog on the corner, that dog could have found the Sinai brothers. So here's an example of a real world dog in a choke point at an airport. You're gonna see the dog smells behind people as they go. Everybody leaves awake. Some are more exciting or smellier than others. Some are not. And, it doesn't necessarily look like the dog's working real hard. Most people probably think, oh, the dog's just here as a deterrent. But truly, the dog is absolutely working. You're gonna see this lady in the white shorts? Watch her. She's gone instantly, got it. Follows her around. Now, this is a training scenario, so obviously the dog was allowed to continue right up to her and eventually does sit behind her. In the real world, the moment that dog alerted on that person, more than likely that officer's talking to a command booth and they're not even going to pursue that woman and somebody else will come in. So one of the things to understand about the dog in this team is that the dog is there to alert that there is something. The dog is not a multi-purpose dog. This dog is not for really apprehension. It's not going to do that. This Labrador is a single purpose dog that is going to say, hey, I smell something, I found something, and then somebody else is going to come in and investigate it, and this dog is going to go back and take a break and get a treat. So where are vapor wake dogs? They're all across the United States. Many, many places have them. Obviously at graduation ceremonies, all football games. We actually, in class right now, Underdog, I don't know if you guys remember him from last year's Tiger Giving Day video. So Underdog is in class right now with an Auburn police officer. So Underdog is going to get to come home, hopefully, and live right here in Auburn and work. So that's pretty cool. So when we talk about moving forward with research and understanding, again, you heard me say that it's all dependent on how to communicate with the dog. So we've learned how to train the dog. We've tipped, just the bottom of how olfaction works, because there's so much more to discover with it. It's quite fascinating. And we have an individual on staff now that this is her specialty. And so we're going to make some massive advancements in olfaction work here in the coming future. We've learned how to pretty much operate this dog, but then we also want to understand how this dog processes information. We want to understand how the brain functions and what we can learn by presenting odors to it, and watching how the brainwaves function so that we can then say, well, if it understands it this certain way, maybe we should train it or expose it in this manner so the dog understands faster. Some of the things that we've looked at are long-term odor memory in dogs. So the question is, what can your dog remember? How long can it remember it? What's the capacity of odor memory? We never run into a problem where the dog can't learn a new odor, but the question is, what is the capacity of it? Can we even measure it? So we've worked with some graduate students to really look at some of this odor memory, and it's really cool. We did a project with DSTL and Office of Naval Research looking at long-term odor memory. So in this project, we allowed the dogs to learn a certain subset of odors. One of the part of the groups, Group A, went and lived a life of luxury with an inmate and just played and did no detection work for a year, came back, and after 12 months, that dog that had just learned those subset of odors and then didn't have any detection work for 12 months had absolutely no problem picking up and detecting the odor. So at least in 1 year's time, which is probably much longer than that, the dog had no issue remembering that odor once it was trained and learned that odor. The next one we were wondering is, what's the dog's capacity for odors? How many odors can we teach it and it can remember long term? So we looked at, in this study, we did 40 odors, and the dog had absolutely, it was kind of a joke. It was like, this is it, give me something harder. So really, 40 odors in capacity for long-term memory was nothing. It's probably really closer to probably 100 at least. If we could even teach the dog continually, there's no telling how capable they are. And the cool thing about this graph on here is you can see, once they learn to play the game, once they understand what we're asking of them, the number of trials it takes to learn new odors goes down absolutely significantly. So if you look at this here on the left, it says A01. So you can see that most of the dogs, it took about 70 trials of work to truly understand that one odor. We had one special dog up here. You can see it right about 200. Needless to say, that dog was a problem child the entire way out. if it in real world, needless to say, that dog wouldn't have continued on. We would have just said, you should maybe try something else, because 200 was a, goodness gracious, it was one of those like, come on, you can do it, but it made it troublesome. But as you can see, as we went down, every additional odor that we added, it took less and less trials to where at the end, we were doing about 5 trials and the dogs have it. So once it learns to play the game, in that communication of what we're asking of you, its ability to learn is very impressive. So then we decided, well, what's short-term odor memory in dogs? In short term, you know, is one of those things that it's kind of hard for everyone to fathom, because you think short-term memory is today. No, short-term memory is really 10 seconds or less. So we did this project with these dogs and a graduate student looking at, in short-term memory, how many odors could we get the dog to learn in a game where we continually asked it to find the new odor. So we had this dog go in on that scent wheel that you saw. Let me see back here. So this scent wheel here with the cinder blocks. So the dog would go in there, and every time it went in, we would ask it to find the new odor. So we would show it the odor and then send it in and expect it to find the new odor. So in short-term memory, the dog could make up to 72 odor discriminations less than an hour. So, and that was just as far as we really had pushed it at that point. So we're expanding on this a little bit more. And can the dog truly remember? How many odors can it remember? Can it understand this game of, I'm always going to find the odor that's new in this scenario? And how do we communicate that? And how does the best way to learn it so that we can send a lot of this information out to teams that are training and managing their dogs? Because if you have, let's go back talking about this long-term memory, if you have a dog that can remember an odor in 12 months and have absolutely no issue with it, you don't necessarily at your agency have to keep very volatile explosives in-house. You can train on them every 6 months and let somebody else manage them, but your dog is still proficient in that area. So that's major for agencies when you talk about taking this into the real world. They don't have to train every day and every week on every single odor because the dog is absolutely capable of remembering it. One of the big things we did this past year was electronic detection. So this is basically in computers and cell phones, in USBs, in anything that has a memory component to it. There are different kind of chips in these devices. We were asked to assist to determining if dogs could find this electronic device because this kind of capability would really assist law enforcement in finding individuals that, honestly and truly, it happened a lot with child pornography cases because these devices would be hidden. So we took the dogs and we used a lot of different memory components and we trained the dog on these devices, and then we operationalized the dog, and the dog can absolutely find this electronic storage. And it's smart enough to where you can actually have your cell phone in your pocket and your dog knows that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this hidden device in this area and I'm going to find it. It also really helped for when you talk about, as a big component, a lot of agencies want to keep stuff in and not let information get out. Well, this dog can screen you coming in and out and knows if you have anything on you that you're not supposed to take in or out of that location. So here, I think we're going to get into where everybody has their questions. If you have a question more during this, please just unmute yourself and ask it. You won't bother me at all. So we started the biodetection program. So we started the biodetection program in 2015. We did this with the support of the Richard G. and Dorothy A. Metcalf Foundation that supports our program. With this first round of biodetection, we were the first group to actually determine that dogs could discriminate between viruses. And that really led to the creation of this biodetection program advancement and this canine sensing platform. So when we talk about this, I'm actually going to show you some really cool videos next of how we've done this to ensure that the dog, well, in some ways to ensure that the dog is safe during this process, because you can't just put person in full PPE and not be concerned about the dog's safety. So that's one of the things that we've really worked with NIST and FBI to determine, or excuse me, to develop a target that the dog is safe from. But in this, we developed a target. We then again imprint the dog or train the sensor, and then we can use this for operation. I can't say it. I can't say it. You can read it. And defend. We did this first round of projects with BVDV. So we actually used bovine viral diarrhea virus to see if the dogs could locate that, and then used a strain of herpes virus and then an influenza virus to see if the dog could actually discriminate between the three, because they all function very similarly in the body. The dog had absolutely no issue locating the BVDV. So that took us a little bit further in biodetection. We realized the dog can find this virus. If we have a certain scent signature of the virus, the dog can easily learn how to find other viruses as long as we can train it correctly. So again, we are working with the FBI and NIST, and we have this material that we're now allowed to talk about, thank goodness, because it's so cool, and all of the patents and stuff are submitted, so that's really, really exciting. But it's called PDMS, and it's a odor capture and release technology. So it allows us to go into locations that you couldn't take explosives. You can see we're in Walmart right here. You can't really very easily take an explosive into Walmart. That's not going to go over with anybody very well. Everybody wonders, what is the dog in here looking for? And I'm going to show you what this material looks like, and we can take it anywhere, and it's safe. It's rendered safe. We don't have to worry about panicking anybody, because if we were to hold it up and say, this is what we're looking for, you're going to go, oh, there's nothing on that. That's just a little piece of rubber material. You won't think it's a big deal. So I'm going to show you 2 videos of 2 dogs working, and you can really see how the dog works in this environment. It's a little loud because we're in a water plant. So you can see that it took the dog a minute, but he had to clear that entire space. And if that was dependent on somebody coming in and swabbing it and then testing it in a lab, it would take you months to get through that entire space. What the dog is looking for in this scenario is a bacteria. It's a sanitized, autoclaved, safe material that is in no way, shape, or form a live virus, but this really cool material, this PDMS that we've used, is able to be autoclaved, and so we can take it out into the environment. So we can capture the odor of whatever material we're looking for, but we're not taking anything out of a laboratory that shouldn't be out of it. So I'm going to show you another video of the next dog. You can see this dog's going to work a little bit differently. This one was a little bit handler dependent. If you notice, she had to redirect him more than once to say, hey, check that. You didn't check that seam. Hey, you didn't check this seam, because he was a little bit hesitant of where the odor was coming out of. He went into odor, and you could see the moment his whole body language changed, and he said, I know it's over here, I can smell it, but he wasn't really real exact to pinpoint where. So you'll see the next dog, he works a little bit more efficient. So you can see that dog was actually later in the day. So he was a dog that was run about 4 dogs in. So that material has been sitting there for all this time now, and that odor is dispersing. So I hate that I didn't mute the sound and didn't get to narrate that for you, but you could kind of see how he would run through the odor and smell it, and then get to the very edge of what we call the odor distribution of where the scent is no longer strong, and he would stop and turn around and go back to where he was, because that was really the threshold or the parameter of where that odor was dispersing to. And he knows, or she knows, that you have to get back to absolutely the highest concentration. The goal is to get as close as possible to the target and know this is where it's located. Now, again, when a lot of what we call, when that dog hits that odor and has what's called a change of behavior, you can see a big difference in the body language of the dog. In the real world, in that situation, as soon as the dog more than likely had a change of behavior, depending on where they were, what they were looking for, they would have said, the handler would have said, hey, my dog says it's in this area, we'll get out of here. You send in your, explosives team and let them handle wherever this target is. But again, this target was an autoclaved safe bacteria. So the odor was captured in this PDMS, and the odor was coming off, but there is absolutely no live virus, so it's safe, but then the dog can find this bacteria. Does anybody have a guess of where it's located? I'm going to show you, but I mean, okay. So that was your target. That material is what is going to change detection technology and make it that much better. It is called, again, the FBI and NIST have worked with us in certifying this material and showing that it works. It's worked with biologicals, it's worked with chemical or explosives, and it changes everything because it's autoclavable. It allows us to ensure that the dog is not being exposed to anything. The handler should not be exposed to anything. It's not going to blow up. If somebody picks it up, they have no idea what it is. It's a great technology to really advance and change detection because we can locate all kind of things now because we can actually bring them out of a lab. So
Pamela, we had a question that came in.
Oh, I can't see any of that. So
okay.
Yeah, please.
Well, I'll read it to you. Carol Warfield would like to know if there are more than one sites of the odor when the dog identifies the first site, will the dog persist in looking for or identifying other potential targets in the same area or facility?
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that they train with variable reward schedules. A lot of times, so dogs that get deployed with the military, those dogs will typically find 3 to 4 targets before they get rewarded, depending on what kind of location they go into. So the dog, you build upon that. Obviously, you can't just send them out and not reward them immediately, but you do this variable reward schedule so that the dog knows, hey, I found this one target. I'm going to turn around and look for another target. That is absolutely a standard occurrence to make sure that the dog can clear an entire space. So again, that was a training scenario. So we, in proof of concept, need to know that the dog can find the target individually. But if we were truly an agency clearing that power plant, you would clear the entire building before you rewarded your dog. And then somebody would go in and find all of the locations that you flagged as, hey, my dog had an interest here in this area, it had a change of behavior, it gave me a positive response here, and somebody would go in and check all of those. So yes, absolutely, you would train your dog to do multiple finds.
Okay, and I have a question too. How far from the target can the dog be and still pick up on the odor? Like if you're in a Sam's warehouse store and something's on the top shelf, can the dog still pick it up if it's on the ground?
Yeah, so that is, if we had odor goggles, we would all be brilliant. That's what we try to say all the time, because sometimes it's hard to tell. Now, we have learned through a lot of research how different explosives and different materials function. So we know that some, when it's hot, they disperse more freely and it makes it easier for the dog to find it a further distance. Now, if you have air movement, a lot of times we'll do vehicle searches here at the Auburn vehicle lot where they park all the vehicles. And these dogs, it'll be hidden on one vehicle at the end of the parking lot, and they can hit it from the clear other end of the parking lot, so over 100 yards away. We've hidden stuff outside where the wind carries it, and I mean, some even, it's extremely, extremely far depending on the urban clutter and the materials that the odors bounce off of and what they stick to. If you're in a Sam's Club, there's a lot of air movement. If you have, like you said, something hidden on a top shelf, that one's going to be a little tricky because you think of all the air return vents in the top of the building. They're sucking all the air up. So it may or may not really even drop depending on where it comes out. But once it sucks in, it has to push it out somewhere. So in that situation, if you were clearing that building for a threat, you would turn off the air handler unit so that nothing moved, so that the air didn't disperse the particles. And then that odor would eventually fall down to where the dog could find it. It really also depends on the dog. So if you have a dog that has a very high air sending capability, it could walk in the front door and hit it. I mean, we've had dogs outside of rooms that say, get me in that room, I know it's in there. And we've had other dogs that have to come in and get relatively close to it. That's actually one of the things that we're trying to understand more and quantify of in our population, what is our sensory capability, and or Are there certain materials that the dog shouldn't be exposed to? Are there certain medicines that interfere with the dog's ability to have olfactory capabilities that are extremely high? All of that we're studying, because there are those dogs that, like I said, can walk outside of a building and say it's in there guaranteed, and then there are other ones that have to get closer. But it's really very dependent on the conditions of the space and the way the air's moving. Luckily, we have a lot of places on campus that we've had so many dogs through that we know the way the air moves the odor through there, and we know where the dog, during training for the young puppies, when we put them in that situation, we know exactly how to position them so that they figure out how to succeed. Because, I mean, nobody wants to play a game that they can't succeed and win at. So we make it easy for them in the beginning, we build upon it, and then as they become an adult dog, like, you know, I'm sure everybody was like, just tell him where it is, it's right there, you know, but you have to let that dog work it out. And it took the yellow dog 4.5 minutes, and it took the black dog 2.5 minutes. So you really have to have this patience of, as long as your dog's working and trying to tell you, you know, the handler's more than likely going to let it, in that training scenario, figure it out on its own.
All right. I'm glad you said that, because that's another question that I had. I used to have a black lab, and I had friends that had a yellow lab, and he insisted that black labs were smarter than yellow labs. Is there any difference in the color? Is there any difference in male and females?
Well, so in intelligence, no. So basically, there's absolutely no difference in coat color. So coat, black, yellow, or chocolate, it is simply hair color. So there's, you know, brunettes are not smarter than blondes, or, you know, it doesn't work like that. It's simply just the color of their hair. As far as the difference in males and females, so when we talk about vapor wake repertoire, again, so you need this dog that is extremely independent, very motivated to work, always out in front of the handler, has kind of a pretty big ego because they always win. Male dogs make better vapor wake dogs. So we have found that female dogs respond better to human gestures. So if you have a standard explosive detection dog that is more reliant on the officer to say, hey, let's check this, let's check this, let's check this, you're going to want a female dog because they're not as high-end amped out as the male dog typically is. Now, there are female dogs that absolutely can do vapor wake. There are male dogs that do standard explosive detection work. So in regards to the difference in sex, it's not necessarily one can do it better than the other. Yes, vapor wake male dogs have a certain characteristic personality that they are better, but it all is dependent on the job you're asking the dog to do. If you're looking for a virus, you need a dog that is absolutely slow and methodical, takes its time, is not rushing, is not ramming into things, is not tripping over its own feet. You want to slow down because you're looking for such tiny particles. Whereas if you have a dog that is looking for a kilo of something on a choke point, all that dog's got to do is, oh, I smelled it, and, you know, we can search this shipping carrier or whatever. So it's really dependent on the dog that you want. So the question next is, do you prefer a male or a female dog? So me personally, I want a female dog. But if you talk to a lot of the handlers, they want that high-end, go, over the top male dog. And it's very successful in vapor wake. It's also dependent on, you know, personality of the handler, of how they work best. Now, and that's one of the key things to a displacement of, they definitely try to put personalities that complement with each other, because dogs are a lot like people, and there's many different personalities of it. So here's kind of the meat of what I think everybody wanted to know when we talk about this SARS-CoV-2 detection and what we're doing. So we are working to have a proof of concept that the dog can, in fact, detect SARS-CoV-2, which is, you know, the base of COVID-19. What we are doing is using the BVDV, because I said in that previous project where we proved this proof of concept that the dog could in fact find the virus, we're using that BVDV virus to train the dog how to do the task. Because that was one of the other things you heard me say with that long-term odor memory. You saw in that first one, it took a long time to learn the task. So we don't want to take a dog that doesn't know the task that we're asking it to do and try to get it to find this particular virus, because at that first iteration of it, there's a lot of learning that goes on. BVDV we have worked with several times. We're learning so much more about it. We're learning how the dogs are understanding it, how to discriminate between it, the best way to present it so the dog in fact learns the game. With this coronavirus, the thing that we are working on is we're using an avian model, so chicken. We're using a chicken model of respiratory coronavirus, and that's kind of the key to this, is that there are many types of coronavirus, but we are using a respiratory model in this apparatus here in a clean room with sanitized material so the dog is safe, but to show once the dog learns the BVDV virus, we'll imprint them on this coronavirus. And then where we are in the project right now is we are validating that in this scent room, the dog can in fact find coronavirus. And so far, it hasn't been a problem. Really, as long as you can isolate the individual virus, the dog has absolutely no problem finding what you imprinted it on. I want to, big disclaimer here, and I tried to put it on here. So there is no live coronavirus on campus. We do not have it. We are not using it. Everything we are using is autoclave sanitized. The dog isn't in contact with it. Our people aren't in contact with it. Now, yes, we're all still full PPE just because of the precautions, but we do not have this virus. So please don't tell anybody that we do, because that will create chaos. But we are in the process of using this scent wheel to validate that it is very possible to detect SARS-CoV-2 virus, and the dog is capable of doing it. So it's just a matter of finishing the project and getting the material sent back. But we haven't had, as long as we've been able to correctly isolate the biological, the dog has no issue to find whatever you're asking it to find. It more or less is, are you capable of isolating it? Are you really imprinting the dog on the correct thing? Because there's many different, our cancer detection project that we did for thyroid cancer, we actually had, it was quite interesting because we only had about 40 participants in that project with positive thyroid cancer. And the dogs basically learned all of the individual samples. So they basically learned 40 odors individualized to each person. And then when we tried to go out and say, oh, they can find general thyroid cancer, the problem is we had basically imprinted them on 40 people, and person 41 they'd never seen. So they were like, oh, that's not it. So we've really learned how to isolate and train so that the dog can in fact find it. But yes, we are working to validate this, to create a protocol that we can push out for others to use in training the dog to locate this target. And yes, it is very possible. The dog is very capable of doing it. So that's the future. Dog can do everything. We don't need people anymore, right? No. Some of the cool things that, just kind of breeze through real quick, that we're doing is, really talking in that difference of males and females, trying to understand the mother's impact, like the maternal influences on the puppy and her interaction with them. Is she a helicopter mom? Is she more on the side of do what you want, puppy, you're going to be okay? Or is there the best balance in between? We're looking at APGAR scores on all of our puppies, whether they're born via C-section or whether they're natural, how they come out and how, that initial APGAR score impacts their development. We're exploring more behavioral characteristics because we really want to further understand what is highly, highly heritable in our population. Can we, in fact, map out the genetics of these dogs so that we could take a blood sample of a puppy that's 8 weeks old and know exactly which program it's going to go into, where it's going to succeed. We're working with Dr. Wang on that. He's absolutely brilliant. He normally talks and we're all like, can you bring it down a notch so we can understand? But it is absolutely cool where we're headed with genetics. We're looking at the gut microbiome of the dog because the bacteria in your gut has been linked to mental illness in people. So if you have a deficiency in the gut microbiome, does it make you more anxious? Can we actually determine the best makeup of microbiome in our puppies? And this project is coming to a completion. So we're going to have, maybe the next time you guys hear me talk, it'll be, we have something really, really cool about this. I'm quite excited about it. But we're learning how that microbiome impacts the dog's success. Is there a way that we can manipulate it through probiotics, or can we manipulate it through nutrition? What's the best way to create this sound microbiome so that we can in fact reduce anxiety in dogs? And if we can reduce anxiety in dogs, surely somebody can take it and do something very similar for people and stabilize their guts better and determine exactly when the gut intervention should be done, how early, how late, everything that we can do with it. We're really on that genetic side, everything that we're trying to do is to really enhance our population, the dogs that we are producing here, the training, and then we'll get operational feedback from people so that we can and then push out to those producing dogs here domestically the best way to produce this dog that is able to work independently, have no anxiety, have extreme confidence in their ability, has high air scenting, truly understanding the best genetics, and then allowing really a more broad spectrum of dogs that could maybe do this line of work. You know, everyone always wants to say, well, my shelter dog can do this. Maybe they can, but the repeatability of teaching a shelter dog this repertoire of training is not very good because that dog has had so many experiences. But again, you know, if we can understand the genetics and what traits and what chromosomes certain characteristics fall on, maybe we could screen shelter dogs and say, hey, that one really might work, and then get kind of a best of both worlds for people. So our vision, and I love working with the program, our vision is truly to enhance the power and lives of our canine partner, simply to make the world a safer place for you and me. I feel like we strive to do that every day. These dogs are changing lives. The people that are collaborating with this program are truly making the world a safer place, and it's an honor for me to work with them. You all help make that possible through Tiger Giving Day. Everyone that donated this past year, the litters that are on the ground now are going to do amazing, amazing things, and you all have been a part of it. And like I said, the year before with Underdog, if he, you know, he's coming home. I mean, that's really, really cool of a, you know, right here with us. If you want to know how you can help, so we're not to be full of ourselves, but we're really good at getting contracts and grants. We actually could have more if we had more people and more dogs. But how you can help is through philanthropic support. One of the things we're in desperate need of right now is a new dog truck. So if anybody has an F-250 and above sitting in their backyard that they want to upgrade and donate the old one, we will gladly take the F-250 off your hands, because we have all of our dog trucks were from about 2010 and we're hitting 2020 and we're having to put a lot of work into them. And then again, you know, help raising a hero. So I'll stop talking now and give everybody a break. And then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So why labs? Or is there another breed that would be?
So there are multiple breeds of dogs that can do detection work. Absolutely. And the hardest thing for everybody is that your dog is typically perfect for you. Whether you're a breeder, whether you're just a pet owner, most of the time the dog that you have suits you perfectly. So, but we chose Labradors because they're absolutely the most bred dog in the United States, and several other countries, the most popular dog there too. This dog is absolutely athletic. Its olfactory capabilities are tremendous. It was developed to help fishermen actually locate fish. It's friendly. It's the likelihood that a Labrador is going to bite you is very, very unlikely. It's a situation where it's of correct size. We have been able to eliminate hip dysplasia in our population, and there are many other groups around the country that are taking strides to create sound populations just like we have. So we'll be able to breed and keep inbreeding coefficients low because there's so many dogs. That's one of the things, you know, we try to make sure that there's only so much relation between the dogs and it doesn't go beyond a certain level, because once you get high levels of inbreeding or line breeding or however you want, depending on what breeder you talk to, the higher you get in it, you come up with some other problems that you can't control. And the lab being as popular as it is, we're able to eliminate a lot of any kind of disease that they may have simply because we can breed away from it. And simply, it's just adorable. I mean, look at it. But in the right size, like there's a ton of, the USDA uses beagles, you know, because if I'm getting up into a cargo unit or need to carry this dog to a site, I don't want to have to put a 50, 60 pound lab on my back. I'm going to use a little beagle. But if you're screening in the area of work that we're working in, where there's large groups of people and multi-directional traffic, and people don't really look down at their feet, they're always looking ahead, but a lab is of size enough that people will get out of its way, but they're not afraid of it too. Because if you think about a pointy-eared dog, if you go into an airport with a German Shepherd, people walk away from you. And if your two ways of catching somebody in a situation are either psychological operations or chemical sensing, you have somebody sitting in a command booth watching for psychological operations. And if people are acting weird, normally that's a indication of, hey, maybe we should check that person out a little bit more. But if the dog is what's creating the oddness of activity and movement, then that's a problem. But most people aren't afraid of labs. Most time they'll run up and grab a hold of them. And again, not having that propensity to be aggressive and bite is very good, because, you know, you can imagine the 3-year-old that runs up and grabs its face. You don't want a reaction of teeth. That would be really bad.
So one of the questions that was submitted before was, are the pups that fail training available for adoption?
So I'm always careful with this, because the line of work that we are breeding dogs for, our dogs are phenomenal at doing. There are very, 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 very few dogs that fail, given we're in our 20th year of breeding. So we have really, really tailored this specific type of dog that we're looking for. A lot of what years ago, the dogs that got adopted out, most of them were medical washouts, whether they had elbow dysplasia or hip dysplasia or had some issue that they couldn't be sold. We've eliminated that. And so we don't have medical washouts. And so the only dogs that might wash out and go to someone's home now are either dogs that have been in research for a long time, that have done multiple projects, and you can only do so many projects because the dog gets so smart. You're like, wait, did you learn that off this project or that project? And that gets troublesome. So those dogs get adopted out. Rarely is there a dog that just doesn't want to do the work, that says, no thanks, I don't want the toy, I don't want to exercise, I just want to sit here and I'll watch you work. Now those dogs do go to someone's house to lay on their couch because that's what they're best at. But there aren't really puppies to adopt per se. Most of the time the dogs that are adoptable now are going to be older dogs that have participated in research. So to get a puppy would be absolutely rare. It would be, you know, a once in a lifetime opportunity chance if it did happen. And really, honestly and truly, if you don't have an area that you can let the dog exercise and play, the dogs that we're breeding today need space and exercise and activity. And if you don't give it to them, you might lose your couch because they'll eat it because they're so bored. They really need an outlet for work because that's what we have essentially picked them and pre-programmed them to do, is work, work, work. Now, if you have a bunch of kids and you run and you have land, this is the dog for you because it will keep you on your toes. But if you just want one to take lazy walks with you in the park, these dogs are not that dog.
How many breeding bitches and litters of puppies do y'all have a year?
So we typically keep about 10 females, and we have anywhere between 8 and 12 litters per year, which gives us between 60 to 70 puppies per year. And then what we try to do is keep the female for 2 to 3 litters and then rotate her out, because the dog that we keep for breeding is absolutely the best of the best dog. And we want to make sure that she has the opportunity to do her job. And that would be go on and have a career in detection.
Kim Walker, can I just talk? Pam, thank you so very, very, very much for all y'all do. I will have to say, it does my heart so good to know that our vet school, I mean, we're helping people around the world. So thank you very, very much. And you're doing it as a dog horse person. You are doing it with the utmost of integrity. And I just love that. I have a question. So when you were talking about the 144 million blades of grass in Jordan-Hare, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. How many Jordan-Hares did you say?
7,000.
6,000 Jordan-Hares. Oh my God.
7,000.
7,000?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I got that right. And the other question was, how many national or international security agencies are y'all working with?
So a bunch. We have a lot of contracts and relations with Homeland Security here and the FBI. We do stuff with Austin Naval Research. Abroad, we've worked with the British Defense Ministry. I mean, I can go back to that slide. It kind of goes on and on. We have a highly integrated connection to multiple agencies.
Wow.
We really, Auburn is the prototype, the model for all detection dog training here domestically.
And I ask that because when I'm traveling with my development job in human sciences, which I love, I get asked sometimes about the Auburn dogs or whatever, and I love being able to give some facts about that because people are totally fascinated. It's also fun to walk up to somebody at an airport or wherever and ask if it's an Auburn dog. Anyway, yeah. Thank you very much for what you do.
Well, thank you. And I will say in the next couple years, a lot of our dogs will be integrated with TSA, hopefully. So you'll see more and more Auburn dogs, more than likely at airports.
Sorry, do we have any other questions?
I do. This is Suzette Depke. Do the dogs, like once they're sold and they're with their handler, does the dog live actually with that handler and they're part of that handler's family?
It really depends on the agency. some agencies have kennels that the dogs stay at the facility, and then the owner or the handler comes in the morning and gets them and they go to work. Most agencies, the dog does go home. And that's another reason why really integrating through the prison is such a good time for the dogs, because while they're here with us, they're in kennels. And a lot of times, even the older dogs that get adopted out, they go into a home and they don't know how to act. They've never been told you can't get on the dining room table. Why not? You're allowed to get on whatever you want to, whether there's food on it or not. So it's really a good time for the puppies when they go through the prison, because they learn how to live in more or less a home structured type environment where there are rules and regulations. And the inmates aren't supposed to let them get on their beds, but they do, because everybody lets their dog get on their bed, right? But most agencies will let the dog go home with the handler. And then a lot of times when the dog is ready to retire, that handler gets first right of refusal if they want to adopt the dog and keep it in their home.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a question come in through chat. Do you need volunteers? And if so, how can they help?
Oh, yes. So absolutely. No, we have a great group of volunteers right now. I mean, they're tremendous. They help us so much. The situation we're in with the alternate operations at the university, we actually haven't been able to utilize our volunteers for several months, and we miss them desperately. There is opportunity for volunteers all the time. Unfortunately, I don't know when we're gonna be allowed to have the volunteers come back at this point. I hope it's soon, because they add so much to the program. And I'm working on that. We're trying to make sure that if they do come back, everybody can be safe and take precautions where needed. But we desperately want them to get back in here. So that email that Kim sent out of the flyer, on the back of that flyer, there's an email. It's cps@vetmed.auburn.edu. If you email that, or you can email me. I don't know if my email got put on anything, but Kim can send it out to you, and you can email me because I handle all the volunteers, and just tell me your interest, and I can put you on the list for when we finally get back to being able to have volunteers. Then I can contact you then when that happens.
Will Alabama prisons ever be used for homing the dogs?
Well, so the problem is that all the prisons that we use are privately run, and they put about $200,000 a year into our program, and there's no privately run prisons like that in Alabama. And so if we went and looked at one down near Maxwell, and it would have been conducive, but the problem is they don't have funding to help with it. And we depend a lot on the prisons in Florida and Georgia putting those funds into the program. They actually hire a full-time prison program manager. That's their only duty, is to oversee the dog program. And then they have an assistant that they hire, plus they help offset some of the medical costs, and they feed the dogs, all of their heartworm preventative and flea medicine, they handle all of that. So now we would love it. I mean, if we could have them right down the road from us, that would be so much easier, because we're driving right now about 2.5 hours at least to get to the dogs when they're in the prisons. But I don't know if Alabama will get to a point that has those privately run prisons.
Anything else? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Elizabeth Fukai to close us out.
All right. Pamela, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. I have learned so much. Thank you all to everyone who joined us today. I hope you've enjoyed it just as much as I have. We do have another event coming up on Friday this week, also via Zoom. It'll be at noon as well. And it's going to be on the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, taught by Dr. Michael Green, who's out of the College of Human Sciences. at Auburn University. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. We'll be happy to give you that information. And I want to thank our corporate sponsors who help make programs like this possible. They are Alabama Power, Auburn Outreach, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Chambliss King, EAMC Foundation, The Flower Store, UBS, and Warren Averett. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
It was wonderful.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
All right, thank you.